Welcome, the anointed ones. The most dangerous person is not the one who fights, but the one who finally stops hiding. Let that settle. Because when the quiet one walks back into the room with no shame, no mask, and no apology, you can feel the temperature change. Suddenly, the room gets real honest, real quiet, real quick. See, here's the thing. Most people don't fear monsters. They fear mirror holders, the ones who survived the fire and still have the nerve to show up glowing. Fact. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people subconsciously feel threatened by anyone who disrupts the social script, especially someone who breaks out of trauma, silence, or suppression and returns, whole, healed, and louder than ever. So now you're walking through town like a plot twist with legs. And folks are panicking. They were so sure you'd stay curled up in the shadows, licking your wounds like a wounded background character, but nope, you popped out like, surprise, I'm the storyline. And the look on their faces? Priceless, like someone just saw a ghost who remembered everything. They thought you'd be hiding. Instead, you're glowing like you ate the script and rewrote the ending. So what's got them shaking in their boots? Why are so many people stunned you're not ducking, shrinking, or explaining anymore? Stick around, because we're about to unpack exactly why your presence alone is blowing fuses, breaking narratives, and making people wish you never got back up. Let's get into it. Number 1. You were never hiding. They just couldn't see beyond their own programming. People assumed you were hiding because they couldn't recognize what they weren't programmed to see. You weren't hiding. You were becoming. The truth is, you've been in plain sight the whole time, just not within their limited line of vision. You weren't behind a curtain, they were behind a filter. And that filter distorted everything about you because they were only trained to recognize loud, flashy, approved by the crowd personalities. But you were running on a completely different frequency, one that couldn't be decoded by shallow minds or fear-based eyes. They didn't see you because they didn't want to. You challenged their comfort. You defied their expectations. You made them question the story they told themselves about what power, success, and authenticity are supposed to look like. And now that you've stepped forward with clarity and confidence, they're in shock. Not because you appeared, but because they're finally realizing you were always right there. They missed the entire show because they were too busy watching shadows. They thought you disappeared because you were broken. The real reason they couldn't find you? You were in sacred isolation, being rebuilt with material they don't understand. You weren't hiding. You were downloading wisdom, upgrading your discernment, unlearning the false labels they stuck on you, and aligning yourself with a truth that doesn't ask for permission. Now you walk into rooms and they feel it. That unsettling shift in the atmosphere, that's their awareness catching up to your presence. They can't deny you anymore, and it's freaking them out. Because if you were right there the whole time, what else have they been blind to? If someone as powerful as you was invisible to them, what does that say about their so-called insight? You're not shocking people because you're loud now. You're shocking them because you were always meant to be seen. And now they're realizing it was never you who was hidden. It was them who lacked the sight. Number 2, you're not loud. You're unapologetically real, and that's what terrifies them. They were prepared for someone flashy, someone loud, someone trying to prove something. That's the kind of person they know how to handle, someone desperate for applause, someone dancing for attention. But when you showed up, you didn't do any of that. You didn't perform, you didn't over-explain. You didn't need the crowd to clap in order to feel valid, and that's what really rattled them. You weren't seeking a spotlight, you were the spotlight, just by being real, just by being you. You didn't have to shout to be felt. You didn't have to flex anything. You walked in with an energy that spoke louder than performance ever could. And it hit people in a place they weren't ready to be hit, their sense of self. Because you represent everything they've been trying to pretend to be. While they built whole personalities around trends, filters, and groupthink, you were cultivating depth. While they were memorizing scripts to fit in, you were learning how to live without one. So now that you've stepped into the open, unapologetic and clear, they don't know what to do with you. You don't fit their categories. You don't play by their rules. You don't shrink to be liked or perform to be praised. And when someone walks in with that kind of raw self-acceptance, it's unsettling for those who've only known approval through pretending. You stripped away the performance they're addicted to. You didn't show up with gimmicks. You came with truth. And real truth doesn't ask for permission to exist. It just does. That's what makes you so dangerous in their eyes. You didn't wait to be introduced. You didn't wait for a seat at their table. You became the table. And now they're scrambling to figure out how someone they counted out ended up commanding the room without saying a word. The fear isn't that you're loud. It's that you're authentic, and your authenticity threatens every lie they've convinced themselves is necessary to survive. You're not playing the game. You are the glitch in it. And that's why your presence isn't just noticed. It's disruptive. Number 3. They mistook your isolation for surrender, not sacred preparation. They thought you disappeared because life broke you. They assumed you were down for good, that you gave up, that you were too weak to face the world. But what they didn't understand is that you weren't hiding. You were preparing. While they were out making noise, chasing validation, and living on autopilot, you were going deep, deep into yourself, deep into healing, deep into truth. They called it isolation, but for you, it was initiation. You weren't avoiding life. You were learning how to live it on your terms. What they mistook for absence was actually alignment. You were removing layers that weren't yours, letting go of roles they forced you to play. You were shedding survival mode and building a foundation based on your real self, not the version they boxed you into. That takes time. That takes silence. That takes pulling away from the chaos and learning how to hear your own voice again. And now, you've re-emerged, but not as the person they remember. You came back sharper, lighter, more rooted. You came back with a presence that doesn't chase or convince. And the people who once looked down on you are confused. Because they thought distance meant defeat. They never expected you to return with clarity and power in your walk. They thought you were gone, but really, you were just getting rid of everything that was never meant to stay. They were busy posting highlights while you were rebuilding your spirit. They were performing while you were pruning. Now they look at you, and they don't know how to respond. You're no longer reacting. You're no longer explaining. You don't need permission to stand tall. You are the permission. And it's terrifying to those who only know how to relate to the old, diluted version of you. They don't want to admit it, but your transformation is exposing their stagnation. You went through hell and didn't come out begging for sympathy. You came out walking like someone who knows exactly who they are, and that kind of energy doesn't just enter quietly. It shakes things. You didn't return to impress anyone. You returned as proof that becoming unrecognizable is exactly what healing is supposed to do. Number 4. Their shame was safe until you chose to speak the unspeakable. They were comfortable as long as you kept quiet. As long as you stayed silent, their image stayed clean, their lies stayed protected, and the illusion they built remained untouched. But once you started speaking, really speaking, not with bitterness, but with bold clarity and unapologetic truth, everything began to shift. Because your story doesn't just expose individuals, it exposes the entire system they were complicit in. And that's what has them on edge. Your truth carries weight. It pulls the rug out from underneath well-crafted masks. The roles they played so convincingly start to crumble the moment you open your mouth. Because your voice doesn't just bring light, it brings context. It fills in the blanks people were never supposed to connect. Suddenly, things that didn't make sense about you, your absence, your pain, your silence, it all starts to click for those who are listening. And that terrifies the ones who spent years rewriting your narrative to suit their comfort. They thought they could bury your truth with shame. They used guilt, manipulation, gaslighting, anything to convince you that speaking up would make you look crazy, bitter, or dramatic. But you didn't just survive what they did to you, you understood it. And that understanding is dangerous because now you can't be controlled. Now you see through the structure. Now you speak without fear. And here's the part that really unsettles them. You're not coming with rage. You're not out for revenge. You're just telling the truth, calmly, clearly. And when truth doesn't come with anger, people can't deflect it as easily. They can't say you're emotional or unstable. All they're left with is your story, and the mirror it holds up to them. The shadows they were hiding in don't feel safe anymore because your light isn't passive. It's active. It's calling things by name. It's breaking generational silence. It's daring others to question what they've accepted. You're not just telling your story. You're shaking the ground under everything that kept it hidden. And now they realize, if you could find your voice, others will too. And once that starts, there's no going back. Number 5. They counted on your compliance, not your comeback. They thought you were finished, done, crushed by the weight of what they did or didn't do. They mistook your silence for surrender and your absence for defeat. And in your quiet season, they got comfortable. Comfortable believing you were out of the picture. Comfortable talking about you in past tense. Comfortable building narratives where they came out clean and you stayed invisible. What they didn't realize is that your silence wasn't submission. It was strategy, it was healing, it was alignment. And now that you've returned, different, stronger, clearer, it's making their whole structure shake. You weren't just gone, you were becoming. You were listening to the divine blueprint being whispered to your spirit. You were recovering what they tried to take, your voice, your clarity, your identity, and now you've come back with authority. Not loud, not angry, just sure. And that kind of confidence breaks illusions. It disturbs the roles they cast themselves in, because your presence now calls their entire performance into question. They counted on your compliance. They built stories where you were always the problem, the weak one, the lost one. That story gave them status. It gave them pity. It gave them power. But now, with you back in your rightful energy, the narrative is unraveling. Their crowns were only held up by your silence. And now that you've reappeared with evidence, wisdom, and unapologetic truth, their throne is shaking. It's not just that you came back. It's how you came back. Whole, unbothered, clear-eyed. You didn't return with desperation. You returned with discernment. You're not asking for a seat at their table. You are the table, and they don't know how to function around you now. The version of you they controlled no longer exists. The version of you they manipulated no longer plays along. You leveled up, and now their position looks fake, weak, and hollow. The real shock isn't your comeback, it's the realization that their entire setup only worked because you weren't standing in your full truth. Now that you are, the lies are leaking, the masks are slipping, and the illusion is cracking. Your return wasn't just unexpected, it was unstoppable. And now they can't unsee what you've become. Number 6. They thought you'd be ashamed of your scars, but you've weaponized them. They expected you to carry your pain like a secret, to tiptoe through life trying to cover up what happened to you. They thought your past would keep you quiet, that your scars would shame you into invisibility. But what they didn't anticipate was that you'd flip the entire narrative. You didn't just own your scars, you weaponized them. You turned every crack into a window, every wound into wisdom. You didn't shrink, you shined. And not in spite of what happened, but because of it. They were waiting for you to stay stuck, to walk around feeling small, haunted, humiliated. But instead, you started telling the truth about what broke you, and you did it without flinching. You spoke it, wrote it, wore it, and taught from it. You didn't try to erase the past. You repurposed it. And now, every traumatic chapter they thought would silence you has become a blueprint that others are learning from. The scars they hoped would embarrass you are now your proof of survival. You're not trying to be perfect. You're living proof that healing doesn't mean being untouched. It means being undeniable. They expected your pain to be your weakness, but it became your sharpest strength. Because nobody can argue with someone who's been to hell and came back with a guidebook. You didn't let your wounds rot you from the inside. You alchemized them. You found the message in the mess. And now, your story carries a power that exposes, heals, and liberates. You're not just telling it for sympathy, you're telling it for strategy. You're helping people see that survival isn't enough. There's another level: revival, reinvention, reignition. They thought your scars would mark the end of you. But now those same marks are starting conversations, breaking chains, and awakening people. You turned what should have destroyed you into a legacy. You're not surviving anymore, you're leading. And every time you speak, show up, or step into purpose, you remind them, the pain didn't win. You did. Number 7, you broke the unspoken rule. Stay small so we can stay comfortable. There was an unspoken rule placed on you early on. Stay small, stay quiet, don't rock the boat. It wasn't said out loud, but it was felt in every glance, every backhanded compliment, every time you were ignored when you spoke too boldly or shamed when you stood too tall. You were expected to dim yourself just enough to make everyone else feel okay. Your brilliance, your insight, your power, it made them uncomfortable. So they taught you, through subtle manipulation and emotional withdrawal, that being less of yourself was the only way to be accepted. But you broke the contract. You stopped shrinking. You stopped apologizing for taking up space. You stopped carrying the weight of other people's insecurities. And now that you've stepped into your full self, they're spiraling. Because your expansion is exposing the places in their lives where they settled. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your boldness reveals their fear. Your truth confronts the lies they've been living with comfortably. They don't hate you. They hate what your presence forces them to confront. You shattered the silence they depended on. You're no longer the background character they tried to keep in your place. Now you're front and center, not demanding attention, but commanding energy. You walk into spaces and make people feel what they've spent years avoiding. Inadequacy, guilt, regret, jealousy, and fear. You didn't attack them, you just outgrew them. And that alone shattered the illusion. Because once someone sees you break free from what they're still trapped in, they can't pretend their cage is a palace anymore. And that's what's really shaking them. They're scrambling now, trying to rewrite the story, trying to reframe your evolution as arrogance, your voice as ego, your confidence as a threat. But the truth is, you were never the problem. You just stopped complying with a system that only loved you when you were manageable. You've become a mirror now. And not everyone wants to see themselves that clearly, especially when they realize the only reason they were ever comfortable around you was because you kept yourself hidden. Number 8, you didn't emerge for attention. You emerged as evidence. You didn't come back looking for validation. You didn't reappear because you needed eyes on you or hands clapping for your return. That was never the mission. Your emergence isn't about visibility, it's about proof. You walk now as evidence, living, breathing, undeniable evidence that everything they said was impossible is already happening through you. And that kind of reality doesn't need applause. It speaks for itself. They built entire belief systems around the idea that someone like you would never rise. That someone with your background, your setbacks, your wounds, your silence, couldn't possibly carry that kind of power, clarity, and presence. They assumed you'd be another casualty of your circumstances, another name forgotten, another story cut short. So when you walked back in, not just alive but illuminated, they didn't just see a person. They saw a contradiction to everything they swore was truth. You exposed their limitations without saying a word. You didn't need to drag them or challenge them. You just became. And that becoming rewrote the entire narrative they tried to stamp on your life. Your presence challenges their theology, their logic, their social hierarchies, and even their sense of control. Because if you could overcome what they said was unhealable, what else have they been wrong about? You're not standing in rooms for attention. You're standing as the result of divine orchestration, grit, obedience, and transformation. And while they scramble to make sense of how you got here, the truth is you didn't take a shortcut. You walked through fire. You didn't fake it till you made it. You faced it till you transformed. What's uncomfortable for them now is that your life is quietly flipping the script. You're not just surviving. You're thriving in a way that breaks their formulas. You're showing others that boxes can be broken, ceilings can be shattered, and that the people counted out are often the ones chosen for the greatest impact. You didn't emerge to be seen. You emerged to be witnessed. And every time someone looks at you now, they're forced to rethink everything they thought they knew about resilience, timing, and destiny. You are the proof they prayed didn't exist. And now, you're standing right in front of them. Number 9. You made peace with being misunderstood, and that made you unstoppable. They banked on your need to be understood. They assumed you'd stay stuck trying to explain yourself, trying to prove your innocence, your worth, your heart. They thought you'd be out here clearing up lies, defending your intentions, and begging for someone, anyone, to finally get you. But that version of you no longer exists. You stopped trying to be digestible to people who never had the capacity to see you clearly in the first place. You stopped chasing clarity from those who were committed to misunderstanding you. You made peace with the fact that not everyone wants to understand you. Some people benefit from twisting your truth. Some people feel better keeping you small, confused, and off balance. So when you finally accepted that, not with bitterness but with clarity, everything shifted. You detached from the need for approval. You stopped performing. You let go of the pressure to correct false narratives, and in doing so, you took your power back, completely. Now, your presence speaks differently. It carries a weight that isn't looking to be liked. It moves with a frequency that says, I don't need to be invited, I belong here. That's what disturbs people. You're not walking into rooms seeking permission anymore. You're walking in fully owned, fully grounded, fully you. They can't control someone who no longer fears being misunderstood. That's why they're shaken. They can't manipulate you through guilt or the hope of finally being accepted. You stopped editing yourself to fit their comfort, and that makes you unpredictable in the best way. You're no longer shape-shifting to keep the peace. You are the peace now, and you're unbothered by who can't receive it. People don't know how to respond to someone who doesn't flinch when they're misjudged. Your calm disrupts their chaos. Your silence doesn't read as weakness anymore. It reads as mastery. You're not on trial and you're not auditioning. That energy, it's rare, it's sovereign, and it's what makes you unstoppable now. You've become someone who can't be rewritten, renamed, or redefined by people who only knew a version of you that no longer exists. That's what scares them most. You've evolved past their access. Number 10. They thought exposure would destroy you, but it delivered you. They truly believed that exposing you would be the end of you. That once people saw the mess, the flaws, the gossip, the half-truths, they'd turn away. They thought if they could drag your name through enough mud, the damage would be irreversible. They banked on humiliation, crushing your spirit. but they underestimated what happens when someone is already free. You didn't collapse under the weight of their lies. You converted it into fuel. They weaponized your past, distorted your story, and paraded their version of events like a trophy. And for a while, maybe it looked like it worked. Maybe people believed them. Maybe you were isolated, misunderstood, or even judged by those who never even knew you. But what they didn't account for was your resilience. They forgot that someone who's already been through fire doesn't burn the same. The exposure didn't destroy you. It refined you. You didn't run from the rumors. You faced them. You let the worst of it surface, and instead of fighting it, you rose above it. You allowed the world to think what it wanted, while you focused on becoming undeniable. And now, the resurrection is loud, clear, and completely unbothered. You're not responding to the noise. You are the quiet thunder that follows every storm. Your reputation was crucified, but your rebirth is public. And it's disrupting everything, because people are starting to realize the real story doesn't match the one they were told. Your presence is confronting the lie. Your joy is challenging their judgment. Your peace is exposing their projections. They're not ready for this version of you, the one who's no longer trying to prove anything, the one who no longer flinches at the mention of your past, the one who walks like the grave they tried to bury you in, has become your platform. You didn't just survive character assassination, you outgrew it. And that's what stings the most. You're not bitter, you're not broken, you're not hiding, you're glowing, you're focused, you're back. And you didn't ask for permission, because this time you are the headline. Number 11. You didn't come back to be seen. You came back to be felt. You didn't return for attention, applause, or to finally get your moment in the spotlight. That's not what this is. You came back on assignment, with weight, with wisdom, and with a presence that can't be ignored. And the people who once overlooked you can't put their finger on it, but they feel it now. Something shifted. Something's off. And that off is really just you disrupting everything they tried to keep comfortably in place. You walk in, and the air shifts. Not because you're louder, not because you're demanding anything, but because your very existence carries energy that stirs the things people have buried. Your presence reaches past surface-level interactions and hits people in places they don't want touched. Guilt they thought was buried. Jealousy they never addressed. Lies they built entire lives on. You don't just enter rooms, you recalibrate them. You move like someone who knows who they are, and that's why they're uncomfortable. Before, you needed to be seen. You needed to be heard. You wanted people to understand you. Now, you understand yourself, and that makes you a force. You're not explaining. You're not performing. You just are. And that just being carries a level of truth that disrupts every lie someone else is still living in. People don't know how to interact with that kind of vibration. It doesn't fit in a category. It doesn't play by emotional politics. It doesn't shrink or expand for approval. You walk in alignment with your higher self, and that alone collapses false dynamics the moment you speak, or even before you do. Your very being exposes the fake. What they don't understand is that you're not here to blend in. You're not here to be digestible. You're not here for acknowledgement. You're here to activate something ancient, something divine, something that wakes people up. And waking people up has never been a quiet process. You didn't return to play nice. You returned with spiritual velocity. You're not chasing timelines, you're interrupting them, resetting them, redirecting destinies just by standing in your truth. That's why your presence is too loud for the ones still addicted to the lie. You were never meant to just be seen. You were always meant to be felt. Number 12. They're not just shocked. They're spiritually shaken. They didn't just underestimate you. They misjudged the entire assignment on your life. They thought your absence meant irrelevance. They thought your setbacks were the end. But when you came back, not just restored but elevated, it triggered something deeper than simple surprise. It shook them at the root, because now, standing in front of them, is undeniable proof that divine timing is real. And they're being forced to reckon with the fact that they wasted theirs mocking, doubting, and dismissing you. Your return isn't just uncomfortable, it's convicting. It carries a weight that confronts people spiritually. Your growth highlights their excuses. Your rise exposes their delay. And even if they never say it out loud, there's a part of them that knows they had a front row seat to your story, and they still couldn't see you. They laughed when they should have listened. They gossiped when they should have covered you. They distanced themselves when they should have drawn near. Now your presence brings all that back. The guilt, the missed opportunities, the moments they could have chosen loyalty but didn't. You're not just a reminder of who you used to be. You're a mirror reflecting what they failed to do when it mattered. You didn't throw it in their face. You didn't retaliate. But your glow, your peace, your clarity, it's loud. And it's saying what your mouth never needed to. They aren't just shocked you made it. They're shaken by how you made it, quietly. Without their help, without their permission, without compromising who you are. And that shakes something spiritual in them, because deep down they know they were watching a divine process unfold, and they mocked it because they couldn't control it. You didn't just survive, you aligned. You rose in a way that makes timelines, relationships, and reputations shift. You are proof that when something is appointed by the divine, no amount of delay, betrayal, or disbelief can cancel it. That truth is too heavy for some to carry, so they react with discomfort. But don't mistake that for hate. What they're feeling isn't simple envy, it's spiritual shock. Because your rise is reminding them of the time they wasted, the faith they lacked, and the fact that destiny will always find its vessel with or without their approval. Number 13. You proved that living truthfully is the ultimate revenge. You didn't clap back. You didn't plot revenge. You didn't waste time trying to expose anyone. Instead, you did something far more powerful. You chose to live in your truth, fully, unapologetically. And that choice did more damage to the lies than any confrontation ever could. Because when someone builds their identity around tearing you down, nothing disturbs them more than watching you rise without them. They told stories. They twisted facts. They made sure people only heard the version of you that kept them comfortable and in control. And for a while, they thought they won. But your silence wasn't surrender. It was evolution. You weren't hiding. You were healing. You were growing. You were becoming the kind of person who didn't need to say anything for the truth to scream louder than their gossip ever could. Now that you're walking in full alignment, they're scrambling. Because everything about you, your peace, your clarity, your glow, contradicts the narrative they sold. You're not broken. You're not bitter. You're not stuck. You're thriving in a way that forces people to question who really told the truth and who needed the lie to feel powerful. You didn't out-talk them. You outlasted them. You became the proof that you never needed to be vindictive, just whole. And that's what's humiliating, because their entire storyline depended on your downfall. And here you are, unbothered, unedited, and untouchable. You're not defending yourself anymore. You're demonstrating yourself. And that hits different. The revenge wasn't in clapping back. It was in showing up healed, free, and fully you. The way you walk now makes their betrayal look small. The way you speak now makes their assumptions look ridiculous. The way you live now makes their entire story collapse under the weight of truth. And you didn't even have to force it. You simply became it. That's what they never saw coming, that the same person they tried to break would be the one standing strong, not to punish them, but to embody the truth. And that, right there, is the kind of revenge that doesn't need noise, it only needs presence. Number 14. You didn't step out, you stepped into the role you were born for. This was never about a comeback. It wasn't about stepping out to prove anything to anyone. You didn't reappear for applause, recognition, or validation. What's happening now is far more serious. You've stepped fully into the role you were born for. You've entered the stage of divine assignment, not popularity, and that's what's rattling the people who once dismissed you. Because you're no longer moving like someone trying to find their place. You are the place. You're no longer asking if you belong. You're walking like the room was designed around your purpose. This isn't a reintroduction. It's an activation, and it's spiritual. Everything about you is carrying weight now. Your words aren't just words anymore. They cut through illusions, awaken people, and shake stagnant spaces. The steps you take are charged with intention. Your presence alone breaks silence, exposes pretense, and commands a higher level of honesty wherever you go. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. And the people who once thought they had control over you, they feel it, that shift, that undeniable change in energy. They can't quite explain it, but they know they're not dealing with the same person. You're not reacting like you used to. You're not trying to be understood. You're moving with clarity and divine confidence that wasn't taught, it was downloaded. You're not just activated, you're on assignment. And that comes with a power that can't be faked. This is what they feared all along. Not your voice, but your function. Not your strength, but your spiritual position. Because they knew the moment you stopped trying to be liked and started walking in your authority, the game would change. The masks would fall. The roles would collapse. The truth would rise. And you would finally stand as the force you were always meant to be. You didn't step out of hiding. You stepped into destiny. And now that you're walking in it, fully, boldly, unapologetically, there's no going back. The assignment has started. The signal has been sent. And what's coming through you now isn't just presence. It's purpose, perfected in time. They thought you were hiding. They thought you were broken. They thought silence meant surrender and absence meant irrelevance. But what they never saw coming was transformation. Not the kind that screams for attention, but the kind that moves in power, alignment, and divine timing. You didn't come back to take part. You came back to take your place. And now, your presence is more than seen. It's felt deep in the soul. You didn't survive the storm to stay silent about it. You became the storm breaker. Every scar you carry has been turned into a strategy. Every lie spoken over you has been shattered by the life you now live in truth. You outlived the rumors. You disarmed the shame. You dismantled the roles they cast you in, and you did it all without begging, performing, or proving. You simply evolved. Now you walk as the contradiction to every box they tried to keep you in. Your life is unsettling to those who depended on your silence to feel safe. Your growth is offensive to those who were rooting for your ruin. But this was never about revenge, it was about revelation. And now you're living proof that destiny delayed is not destiny denied. You didn't come back for approval, you came back to embody purpose. And now they can't unsee you, they can't unfeel you, they can't outrun the truth that your life now represents. You didn't just return, you rose with authority, with clarity, with grace sharpened by fire. Let them stare, let them whisper, let them wrestle with the weight of what you've become. Because the version of you they counted out is gone, and what's here now is unstoppable. You are no longer hiding. You are walking, fully awakened, in the role heaven designed with your name on it. If this message hit different, if it spoke to your journey, your breakthrough, or your becoming, don't keep it to yourself. Go ahead and like this video so the algorithm knows it's not just noise, it's real food for the soul. Drop a comment below and let the world know which part shook you the most. Your words might be the confirmation someone else is praying for right now. Share this with someone who's rising silently, someone who's been underestimated for too long, or anyone you know is on the verge of their own divine comeback. And if you're new here or haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a word that was meant for you. This isn't just a channel. This is a movement of truth, power, and spiritual awakening. And you're already a part of it. Let's rise together.